Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended life forms are so amazingly primitive that two of them think doing a podcast called Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea is a pretty neat idea. They are Jeff and Bryan. Hi there, this is Jeff. I'm with my friend Bryan, and this is our bonus episode. Hey Jeff,
Bryan,
how are you doing today?
Wait,
How do we start if it's the second bonus episode? Why don't we just forget all that and go right to the comic book?
So here we are looking at the comic book.
Well, Bryan, we have finally made it to the third and final issue of the third and final comic book.
All right.
Wow, you
If
squeaked.
if there's anyone still out there, thank you for listening.
Yes.
We've made it to the third final issue.
Of Life, the Universe, and Everything.
All right. And on the cover, we find one of our favorite little cricket robots about to deploy his bat upon our buddy Zaphod. Looks like he's aiming towards the left head. What do you think?
I think you're correct. And Zaphod is hunched over Marvin, who's missing a leg and is leaned up against the wall, plugged into some kind of a port. Zaphod has his Kilozap gun.
Oh, yes. And I was going to say, his Kilozap gun doesn't look nearly as lethal as they imagine it to be in the book. But, effective.
Yes, I would agree.
And the cover, as we described before, the cover art on the top, the Life, the Universe, and Everything logo is pretty straightforward, just straightforward lettering, etc.
Again, we're going to zip past real quick the publication page. And we're going to get to some creators.
All right. Creators. Is there something new here, huh?
There have been some things new, and I have neglected to mention them. So now that we have come to book 3, I do want to give a little information on the credentials of some of the people we have not seen before.
Right. And the only one who seems to be throughout the entire 9-book series is the adapter.
Correct.
John Carnell. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
The breakdowns for the first issue of Life, the Universe, and Everything were done by a gentleman named Paris Cullins. He has 259 credits in comicvine.com. The breakdowns for the second 2 books were done by Christopher Schenk. And he's only got 12 credits to his name.
All right.
The pencils have been done by Neil Vokes. He has 204 issues under his belt.
All right.
The inks have been done by John Nyberg. He's got 337 issues under his belt.
I got you.
The coloring for this book is done by a different company called Network Color Technology, and they do not give any name to the person who started the business.
Right.
But the lettering has been done by Clem Robbins, and he has 3,112 issues to his credit.
That's amazing. And I did notice that we did talk a little bit about Clem last time, I think.
Yes.
And one thing I did notice, I skipped ahead and looked a little bit about this Network Color Technology. They're credited in this particular issue as being one of the earliest companies to do digital coloring.
Okay, yeah, we're creeping into that era.
So it's interesting.
So we've mentioned a lot about the covers and the style of the covers being different than what's inside the book. And Steve Leialoha, who has done a lot of the art for the previous books, not so much for this third one, has partnered up with a gentleman named Steve Fastener to do all of the covers. And Steve Fastener has 54 credits to his name.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think we may have even mentioned that before. I know that having attended a whole bunch of different conventions, you and I, we know as we walk up and down the artist aisles that it's not an uncommon result that the comic book cover is drawn by different artists.
Correct.
And, it's funny. I always thought that was disingenuous in a way, really, when it comes down to it, in my opinion.
Bait and switch.
But it's a bait and switch. But it is an industry standard. So I don't know. I guess we're only allowed to accept it because that's what they do,
Right. Right.
So I've always thought that was interesting.
So as we get into the comic book a little farther, again, they want to do kind of a summary of what's come before. And this one is called For the Memory Impaired, a brief recap of our story.
And with all the lettering on this page, I wouldn't call that brief.
No. No. But they've got Slarty Bartfast in the middle.
Mm-hmm. And it goes on and on about every little issue.
Yes. And if you read the whole thing, it pretty much just brings you right up to date with what we have dealt with in the first two books.
That's right. Including the whoop and the foop.
The whoop and the foop. Correct. So then we get into the first pages of this book story. And they seem to start with a recap.
Yes, Arthur flying through the air with his blue satchel.
So it says, since escaping with Ford Prefect on a sofa from prehistoric Earth, Arthur Dent has experienced some of life, the universe, and everything. And they show three different pictures. Life is the statue that Agrajag built.
Right.
The universe seems to be him flying. And everything is what appears to be Zaphod, one of his heads, yelling at him. So I'm not exactly sure what that's all about.
You're right. And in the bottom corner is a rather unflattering look at our favorite star Trillian and Ford being lorded over by Slarty Bartfast.
Yes, and they are contemplating the extinction of it all.
Now we're back on the bistro math, right?
Yes, we are. And Ford is talking to Arthur about how Ford is a coward, and at least he's still alive. And Arthur is saying that he's still alive even after asking Thor to step outside for a fight.
Poor Thor.
Yes.
He must be Thor.
Oh, wow. I'll edit that out.
I'm sure you will.
Ford and Arthur are basically arguing back aboard the Beastromath, and Slarty Bartfast is there. And again, he says terrible things are afoot. They have fared rather pathetically at the party, and their only hope now to prevent the robots from using the wiki key is just having to go there. And he doesn't like that idea, and we'll all probably end up dead.
What a nice thing to say.
Oh, they kept the potato chips. So Arthur is asking where Trillian is, and Ford is asking where his potato chips are. And Slarty Bartfast tells them they are both in the room of informational illusions, where Trillian is trying to understand some of the problems of galactic history.
Right, and here we have that pinkish hue that goes throughout the guide description normally, but this is the informational illusion description.
Yes.
And a picture of Trillian eating the chips and engulfed in the imagery of the past.
Yes, and right now the first thing she is learning about is the Silastic armor fiends of Striderax. And that fighting is what they were good at. They used to take out their aggressions by punching bags of potatoes.
I love this. The poor potato.
The poor potato, yes. Punching the sack of potatoes was not very efficient, and it was very time consuming, and they decided they could just shoot the potatoes instead. So in this, they've got a picture of the Silastic Armor Fiend, who's kind of a giant character with these uneven spots, extremely muscular, and he is just smashing a sack of potatoes with one fist, that very big bag of potatoes. And then, of course, he shoots it, and then he shoots all kinds of other things around the room.
Blasting away with his large weapon, shooting projectiles out the side.
Yes. And that led to a renewed enthusiasm for shooting. And then they got interested in war.
Right.
And another one of their achievements was that they were able to shock a computer. The computer that they shocked was named Hector, and it was remembered as one of the most powerful computers ever built. And so then they had a couple of wars, and the thing that shocked the computer is that they ordered Hector to design for them the ultimate weapon. He wanted to know what they meant by ultimate, and they said, read a dictionary.
While punching a sack of potatoes.
Of course.
Oh my gosh.
So Hector designed the ultimate weapon. It was a very small bomb. It was a junction box in hyperspace that would connect the heart of every major sun simultaneously, thus turning the entire universe into one gigantic hyperspatial supernova. And when the Armor Fiends went to use the bomb, it didn't work.
Sentient computers. A new topic of discussion.
Yes. Yeah, current one too.
Yes.
So Hector had been so shocked by the idea of setting off the bomb that he introduced a small design flaw into it and hoped that everyone would understand that the bomb never needed to be set off. And I'm going to check the next page real quick. The comic cuts out a passage that I thought was really interesting, which was basically, I'll paraphrase, that the results of setting off the bomb would be far worse than anything that they thought was the reason they should set off the bomb. So, so Hector was going to make sure that it didn't work, because that would be the end of everything, including the ones who set off the bomb. After the Silastic Armor Fiends discovered Hector made a faulty bomb, they were so upset that they destroyed Hector and started fighting everything, including themselves, and ended up destroying themselves in the process, which was a relief to everyone in the galaxy.
Including the potatoes.
Yes. Yes. And Trillian is still eating her potato chips. And then there's a big Up Next box on Netflix.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
The history of the Cricket Wars follows shortly.
And shortly after that, again, now we're looking at Arthur and Slarty talking to Trillian. And Slarty is reviewing what she's learned. And they are looking out of the spaceport at the location of the Cricket Gate.
Yes.
In the bottom panel here.
So they landed on a small asteroid, which orbited the dust cloud surrounding the slow time envelope, covering the planet Cricket. The robot ship was also parked on the asteroid, and it now began a slow descent through the dust cloud. And our heroes quietly exited their ship to watch the events about to unfold.
Quite an interesting set of drawings there, aren't they? The
Yes.
bottom panel again.
I would say that, to use a British term, it's 4 panels of people looking gobsmacked.
Exactly.
So Arthur's talking to Slarty, saying that there's really nothing we can do at this point. And he's saying, no, the robots have reassembled the wicket key, and they're about to insert it into the slow time envelope lock. And then we get a bunch of onomatopoeia.
Mm-hmm. And the robots start to chant, cricket, cricket, cricket.
Yeah, and it looks like Trillian starts to cry.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is
The
more.
next panel shows, yes, the dust cloud dissolving and the planet of cricket emerging into the visible universe.
Which is kind of weird because the cloud doesn't ever go anywhere. It's just the slow time envelope is removed.
Yes.
To me, this is discontinuous from what the book is. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes, you are. But it clearly shows in this particular picture the sun that cricket is revolving around and the outlying universe.
Yes.
With planets and stars and things of that nature, which the cricket planet would never have been able to see.
And it clearly
So
says,
you're right.
It clearly says the rest of the galaxy was revealed in all its blazing glory, and the robots rejoiced because they could now destroy the rest of everything.
Yeah, so it does imply that the cloud's been lifted, but that is not what happens in the book.
Meanwhile,
our buddy, Zaphod.
he's recovered from being stunned by the robots.
Mm-hmm.
And emerged from their ship feeling very much in control.
And we get the 4 panel of Arthur, Ford, Trillian, and Slarty all saying various amazing things about Zaphod having appeared all of a sudden.
Yes.
And of course, Zaphod is standing there gallantly with his different looking Zappo blast gun.
Yes.
In a triumphant pose.
And then he gets whacked in the back of the head. And then he gets whacked in the back of the other head. So he gets shot and knocked out. They take him. He comes out of the ship. He gets knocked out again. And the cricket ship disappeared with a loud foop. And they all run over to Zaphod.
That's right.
So then back aboard the Bistromath, Zaphod is saying that there's something wrong with the robots. And Slarty Barfast is saying that they're programmed to kill everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And Zaphod's saying that they could have killed him, but maybe they just thought he was some kind of a wonderful guy.
And of course, Zaphod's second head said, "Oh, I can understand that."
Yeah.
Then he starts flirting with Trillian again. Say, "Hey, baby."
And she kind of brushes him off and gives him the cold shoulder. Instead of saying, "So this is it, we're going to die," Arthur says,
"Well, that's goodbye galaxy then."
and they're all upset because they think they have failed. And Ford is saying, "It's because we don't care enough. I told you." And what he's talking about is that they are single-minded, kill everything.
Right.
And if you've got that much determination, nothing is going to stop you.
Mm-hmm. Now, on this page, it looks like pretty much Zaphod's having a conversation with himself.
Yeah, because Slarty has asked him if he has any idea why the robots spared his life.
And, of course, he doesn't.
Oh, he said every time he woke up, they knocked him out again. And that kept him amused for hours.
Oh, good grief. Mm-hmm.
And And Zaphod says, I can hear your ship can move. Can you zip me back to mine? Saying you're not going to help us? Ford's like, us? Who's us?
Ford's still not invested with helping the galaxy.
Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm. And then Zaphod tells Slarty that, he'd love to stay and help with the galaxy, but he's got a mother and father of a pair of headaches.
Yes.
And a lot of little headaches coming on after that.
Yes. But the next time it needs saving, I'm your guy.
And he shakes Arthur's hand.
He calls to Trillian.
Asks Trillian if she was going to leave with him. And Trillian says, no, I'm going down to Cricket.
And now they're on Cricket for real, not just in the illusions.
That's correct. And you can see the massive fleet armada that's stored in the skies and spaces above Cricket. And you can see Slarty and Ford and Arthur and Trillian down on the planet, walking under the lovely trees.
Yes. Above the grass.
Above the grass. Where the songs are beautiful. And here, Ford goes on to ask, on the next set of pages, talks with Trillian and says, Trillian, what are you doing? And Trillian says, she's thinking. And Ford says, do you always breathe like that when you're thinking?
She's like, I wasn't aware I was breathing.
And Ford says, that's what's worrying me.
Oh, and then Arthur's got a gun.
Yes, he's got a gun. And Slarty says, shh. And Arthur is panicked, trying to figure out how to use his gun.
It's got 3 settings. Safety, danger, and extreme danger.
And then, of course, in the next panel, he's dropped his gun and his hands are flown up in the air in surrender.
It looks like Ford had a gun that was shot out of his hand.
That's right. It does.
And they're surrounded by the folks of Cricket who are asking if they are aliens.
Meanwhile, back on the Heart of Gold.
Zaphod is playing video games.
And beep, bop, boop, boop is going on. And, of course, then he gets irritated and monk, he whacks the keyboard. Then, out of pure boredom, he decides to make a call to the universe. He selects a channel and says, hey, anyone out there want a drink? And he's immediately told that he's on an emergency channel, fella.
Yeah.
And
Zaphod's like, got any mixers?
there you go. And the guy says, go take a ride on a comet. Okay, computer, let's go, says Zaphod.
And then they go back to Cricket.
Oh my goodness, I remember how many jumping around.
Yeah.
How much jumping around the books does, right?
Yes.
Page to page at different location.
Back on Cricket, they're being asked about the balance of nature and how if you kill off everything in the entire universe, it might not be good for your ecology. And they're keen on ecology and sport. Yes, sport.
And then, of course, they start. The cricketer looks down at her weapon. Looks like a she, anyway. And says, well, suppose we better kill you all then. And then she looks up and says, unless there's something you'd like to chat about. And everybody looks at each other stunned.
Yes. And they're talking about some of them quite keen to have a sporting links with the rest of the galaxy. And so it might be a mistake to destroy it. And indeed, the rest of the universe. So they decide to talk about it, and there's a very touching round circle with 2 hands touching, with Trillian reaching out to a cricketer. She's like, we have this bomb.
And the cricketer's crying on the shoulder of Trillian. And Trillian staring into the eyes.
And she says her favorite line that she's always wanted to say. I want you to take me to your leader.
Oh, yes. And then, of course, another page, another location.
Yes.
Now we're back up in the fleet, and we find Zaphod crawling through the ventilation tubes.
Yes. So evidently, when he decided to go take a ride on a comet, the comet took him to the Cricket Warfleet.
And his shoe he says shoe, but his spaceship that looks like a shoe is docked underneath one of the large ships. Zaphod has escaped his ship, and is crawling through the Cricket ship and encountering various items as he goes.
Yeah, so he sees that crashed spaceship, and he's like, this is no genuine spaceship. This looks more like a blueprint. And some of the cricketers are telling their commander that there is something wrong with the robots.
And in the other panel, the robots look a little depressed and staring down at their feet.
Yep. And they're thinking that the robots are a little down because they're being phased out of the war effort now that they're going to detonate the bomb. They seem to be sulking.
Yes.
And the commander says,
"Don't be ridiculous. Whoever heard of robots sulking?" And then on the next page, we find our favorite sulking robot, Marvin!
yes.
Here he is in the pose. We've seen him on the cover, leaning up against the wall with his leg missing and wires sticking out. His his right arm actually torn up and kind of dangling.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making up limericks, or singing little songs to himself, as
Yes.
we remember.
Kind of his lullaby.
Right. How I hate the night.
Yes.
Zaphod has emerged from the air vent and says, "Marvin, was that you singing?"
And he said, I am in particularly scintillating form at the moment.
Zaphod says, "Are you alone?"
And he says, wearily I sit here, pain and misery my only companions. And vast intelligence, of course. And infinite sorrow.
And Zaphod says, "What's your connection with all this?"
And he's like, they've got me running the whole bloody operation. I can't believe Marvin ever said bloody. Right? Because that is not a robot.
Not a robot thing to say. It's certainly an English thing to say.
Yes.
And then Zaphod says, "Then I guess you must have saved my life twice." And at that moment,
He says 3 times. And he shoots a robot.
the cricket robot is about to wallop him once again in the head. And he explodes.
He just explodes, yes.
And Zaphod says, "You're doing a terrific job."
And Marvin says, which means I suppose that you're not going to release me.
And he says, "Kid, I'd love to, but you're working well."
Why stop now, just when I'm hating it?
So Zaphod says, "Got any idea where I can find Trillian and the boys?"
And Marvin tells him that he can monitor them from here. And then we see Trillian talking to the Cricket Council,
Mm-hmm.
talking about their history just being a series of improbable events, starting out with their isolation from the galaxy being freakish.
Mm-hmm. And she says it's obviously a setup.
Ooh. Conspiracy. So she asks them if they have any idea what the odds are against a drifting spaceship accidentally intersecting with the orbit of a planet, especially the one planet in the galaxy, or the whole universe as far as I know, that would be completely traumatized to see it.
And then she says, "I wouldn't be surprised if that spaceship was a fake."
Then she kind of insults them, saying all of a sudden they've got all this technology almost overnight, that someone had to be feeding them what they needed to know. And do you expect me to believe that you are bright enough to invent something as brilliant as this supernova bomb and dumb enough not to know it would take you with it as well? And this is really an unflattering picture of Trillian in that bottom right-hand corner.
It is.
Speaking of sack of potatoes, and her 1980s haircut.
Yes, yes.
And so Zaphod is wondering about the bomb thing, and Marvin explains it to him.
And Marvin explains they think they've built it right, but they haven't. They are as stupid as any other organic life form. And he says, I hate them.
And then Trillian, right after that, of course, says to the council, in fact, you're so dumb stupid that I doubt you've been able to build this bomb properly.
Without the help of Hector for these last 5 years.
And then the Cricket Council says, detonate the bomb.
And then Zaphod, in a panic, says to Marvin, can't you do something? And Marvin says, they're on an independent circuit from the others. That's the cricket robot that's about to detonate the bomb.
Right.
And the cricket robot takes a thwack. The bomb goes boomp.
Right. So he swings his paddle, hits the ball against the wall, and when it didn't explode, Trillian said, now we can go talk to Hector.
And so, again, we see the Heart of Gold floating outside of the... Well, actually, it looks like it's orbiting the world in this particular image.
Mm-hmm.
And Trillian is saying, Hector, where are you?
What are you up to?
Yeah, this is funny. Editorially, I've always wondered about this scene. If Hector's real goal was to let the world or the universe explode, why didn't he build the bomb correctly at this point?
Right.
Instead of what he does. I don't understand this part. I guess it would have made for bad TV.
Yes, yes. So Trillian and Arthur meet Hector, and he says that they're going to be safe, and they're on the light bridge, and there's a sofa.
The sofa that doesn't look anything like the sofa that they first appeared on.
It's similar.
In that it is a sofa.
Yes.
Not just a love seat. Cushions and all. Oh, gosh.
So, if you go to page 10, I guess, where the sofa appears, you will see it is the same sofa.
Really?
Colored differently.
Oh, maybe that's why.
It's got the wooden frame just like that. That's brown wood instead of this yellow color. And these cushions are pink where they were red, but it is definitely supposed to be the same sofa.
Oh, there you go. Interesting. It's been so long since we looked at that picture.
Yes.
And here Hector is discussing things with Trillian, talking about what he can do with light, asking if they are comfortable.
And he wants to congratulate Trillian on the accuracy of her deductions. And then Arthur, needing something to say, is just like, yeah, that was all her, but I'm just here because I'm interested in life, the universe, and everything. And he wants some tea.
There you go, of course. And then we see Hector and another chaise lounge that looks like a sleeping lounge that you might find at a psychiatrist's office.
And he says he's just going to sit here on the couch while you play therapist. And Trillian wants to know if, other than light, can he construct real things like a spaceship? And he says he can.
And here we see a picture of a close-up of Arthur's bag.
Yep.
In anticipation.
And he looks like nervous and...
Yes, he does.
Teeth grinding or something.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a funny, obviously the scale of Hector is way out of proportion with the chaise lounge that he's lying on.
Right.
Oh, that's funny.
This is where Hector is just talking about taking space dust and space debris and molecules and encouraging and suggesting them together, tease them into shape, but it takes many eons.
Right. And Trillian asks if he had made the model of the wrecked spaceship, and Hector admits that yes, he had. He made a few things, in fact.
So he said that he repented the sabotaging of his own design for the Celestic armor fiends, and it was not his place to make such decisions. He was created to fill a function, and he failed in it, and he negated his own existence. So he said he deliberately nurtured this planet of cricket until they would arrive at the same state of mind as the Celestic armor fiends and require the design of the bomb that he failed to make the first time.
Oh my gosh. Again, the twisted plot of this particular story.
Yes.
He failed to make it the first time, and then he makes it a second time with the help of the cricketers, and he fails to make it a second time.
Right.
But then, of course, he finally makes it a third time.
And puts it in Arthur's bag. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's a logical extension that I would have naturally made had I been a spaceborne computer with a grudge.
Yes. Well, there was that revenge, of course, because he did get pulverized and left crippled for billions of years.
Yes, yes.
He said, you'd feel the same way.
And Trillian says, does it worry you that you failed?
He says, have I failed? No, failure doesn't bother me now.
Trillian says, you know what we have to do.
And he says, yes, you're going to disperse me, destroy my consciousness, be my guest after all these eons. Oblivion is all I crave. If I haven't already fulfilled my function, then it's too late now. Thank you. Good night. Drop the mic.
And the sofa, which apparently Arthur fell off of.
Yes.
At the exact same moment. Kerplunk on his behind. But he's still sitting on the light bridge.
Yep.
Oddly enough.
So they're back on the Heart of Gold. After Hector's dissolution, the pieces of the Wicket Key were freed, and Arthur collected the ashes from the burnt cricket stump that had formed the wooden pillar. He decided that they should take the ashes back to Earth, to Lord's cricket grounds. In their proper time frame, that's where these ashes belong, and he feels that very strongly, even though the Earth is going to be destroyed in 2 days after he returns them. He is determined.
Right, and of course, then Slarty is saying that this is exactly the sort of thing the campaign for real time is trying to put a stop to.
And Arthur says, yes, but you try telling that to the MCC, the Metropolitan Cricket Club.
And then Trillian is relating to Ford. Ford says, what did he say? Or what did it say? And Trillian said, what's done is done. I fulfilled my function.
The most ominous line in the entire book.
Mm-hmm.
So Ford and Arthur travel through time and space back to the cricket grounds to return the ashes where everything is exploding and on fire. And there's a giant stick through somebody's back, one of the cricket robots.
Yes, and here we see a policeman chasing after Wowbagger, saying, I'm arresting you for insulting behavior. And just as that ship disappears, Ford and Arthur reappear on the planet. Arthur with his blue bag and his bag full of ashes.
Yep.
People are running in terror in every direction.
Yeah, he's trying to take credit for saving the universe. Thinking that should be a crowd stopper.
And Ford said, well, it wasn't. Arthur goes running towards a police officer and said, I've got the ashes. They were stolen by the robot a minute ago.
So after Arthur explains how the ashes were part of a slow time envelope and that the cop can guess the rest. He said, the point is that I've got them, and what should I do with them? And then the
officer whispers in his ear. And then Arthur says, I suppose he was speaking metaphorically. And Arthur becomes enraged and said, is no one interested? And there's a splurt and a slap and a slack and a snack.
And Ford's like, you want to go now?
And Arthur says, oh, okay. And then he sees the wicket gate.
Yes. He's like, hold on, one moment.
When I was a boy...
You can tell me later.
I had a passion for cricket, but I wasn't very good at it.
Or not at all, if you prefer.
And Arthur goes on to say, I always dreamed rather stupidly that one day I would bowl at Lord's.
Okay, get it over with. I'll be over there getting bored.
Yes, Arthur has been carrying the cricket ball around in his air travel bag.
Just in case you wondered where the cricket ball was going to come from.
Yes, that's funny. And Arthur prepares to bowl the ball in all the bowling stance. And just as he's about to throw the ball, he sees that there is a cricket robot standing there in front of the wickets.
Yeah, so he's throwing the ball back and forth from hand to hand, and he's holding it up in front of his face, squinting one eye and aiming at the wicket.
As he's running to throw the ball, Arthur is remembering things that Haktar said. And Haktar says,
have I failed? Failure doesn't bother me.
What's done is done. I have fulfilled my function.
I managed to make a few things.
And just at that moment, Arthur says in the comic book, the bomb, and he trips over his bag.
And misses the ground when he falls. Because he was so intent on the bomb that he forgot to fall.
Yeah. And he missed the ground entirely.
And he said only a cricket robot's bat could detonate the bomb. And he does a big swoop.
He grabs the bat from the cricket robot, swoops up into the air, and kathwack! Knocks the cricket robot's head off.
And very unimpressed, Ford is saying, are you coming now?
Oh my goodness. And the epilogue begins.
Yes. After further travels and many more silly adventures, Arthur has left the Heart of Gold and everybody's waving goodbye. Arthur then decided to find himself a nice little world, settle down, and lead a quiet, retired life.
After some time, he settled on the planet Cricket, which was now, once again, an idyllic pastoral world.
Even if the songs did occasionally get on his nerves.
And of course, while he's on the planet, he spends a lot of time flying, where he's listening to the conversations of birds, and he decides that bird conversation is pretty boring.
Wow, the bird's wingspan is 4.2 inches. That's a small bird, but it's a pretty big-looking bird.
Mm-hmm. It's economical against a strong headwind, it says.
I had some very lovely berries yesterday.
As Arthur sits bored on a tree limb. Oh no! Then one day, who should show up again? But our famous green-skinned guy.
And he's about to insult him, and then he looks at him and says, I've done you before, haven't I? And Arthur just falls down crying.
Into the grass of flowers, looking up at the sky, and we are reminded that this is, in fact,
the end.
Oh my gosh, reliving it in this way is amazing. I'd almost forgotten how disjointed those scenes were from jumping back and forth. But as we discussed when we originally discussed the book, and even different parts of the radio show. This was designed, this particular book was designed against a treatise that he wrote for Doctor Who.
Correct.
So all of these little cut scenes were intentionally designed to be TV-like. Cut scene to here, cut scene to there, you know. And it works for TV, but doesn't really translate, in my opinion, as well in a book.
No, it doesn't. It's really hard to keep everything straight in your mind when you're jumping back and forth so much.
Mm-hmm. And then on this final page of the book, we see Arthur flying in the sky, Ford looking at his Hitchhiker's Guidebook, Zaphod lounging against Marvin.
Yep.
With
holding a
large
bag
bottle in his hand.
Is it a bottle? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It must be a bottle.
Yep.
Thumbs up with one hand.
And Trillian in what I would have to say one of her more attractive poses.
Yep. I would agree. Wearing an outfit very reminiscent of the TV series.
Mm-hmm. We've got Slarty Bartfast leaning against the group, looking away, contemplating what to do next. And at the bottom it says,
"So long, and thanks for all the fish." Which, if I had seen this in normal time, like when it first came out, I would be expecting a fourth comic.
Right.
And then we get to the explanation of the creators.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about them already at the beginning in Network Color Technology.
That's correct. We did.
And then we come to the managerial page with all the editors. And lastly, the back of the book, which is supposed to get us to buy it.
We've got Arthur in a superhero pose with his fists out and his manic face as he's swooping through the air. And it says, "Arthur Dent, superhero? Is it possible? Then yes."
It says, "In this final volume of the answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything, you will see the unexpected, the unusual, and the unthinkable. As mild-mannered victim Arthur Dent, yes, Arthur Dent, turns distinctly heroic. Trillian unravels the mystery enshrouding the planet Cricket by psychoanalyzing a supercomputer. Marvin the paranoid android takes great pleasure, no, really, in destroying the Cricket robots."
The stunning conclusion to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy.
All right. Well, this was wonderful.
Yes, indeed it was.
I am so happy I've got to go through all of these thoroughly. Like so many times you just look at a comic book and you don't really dive into it. We're here.
It's interesting. I mean, overall, what we've learned from what we've seen in the comic book was there was very little divergence from the book itself. And we learned that the hard way.
Yes. Which we'll be talking about shortly.
And we also learned that there was some translation errors along the way, turning certain humorous events into not humorous.
Yes. Yep.
And deleting some jokes and repairing some others, visually anyway. It was quite interesting overall.
Yeah, there is only so much you can put in a comic book, and I can only imagine the editorial process involved trying to decide what to cut out and still keep the story understandable, and I think they do a pretty good job.
They do. Well, Jeff, overall, I think I really enjoyed the process. I hope everyone else out there that's listening enjoyed our view of it.
So do I. And our next episode that's coming in September is technically not going to be anything involving Douglas Adams, but it is involving The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's true.
We are going to do And Another Thing by Owen Colfer, which is the 6th book that was added long after the first 5 and Douglas Adams' passing.
Mm-hmm. Written without any notes from Douglas Adams or any reference to material that he had left behind.
Right. This is a total new and unique property.
I look forward to listening /and/or reading.
Yeah, that's right. It will be my first time.
There you go.
So now that everybody knows what's coming up next. So say goodnight, Bryan.
Jeff.
Wait. Not this
again?
Thank you for listening to Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea. Look for us the first Thursday of every month for a full episode. We will also release a bonus episode later in the month. A very special thanks goes out to Luke, Max, Greg, and Tim Lesnick for arranging and performing our opening theme. We would also like to thank our talented friends and family for their voice work on our introductions and commercials. Visit our website at digitalwatchesareapretyneatidea.buzzsprout.com, where you can find links to all my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy inspired t-shirt designs. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube as Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea, on Instagram at Watches Idea Podcast, and on Twitter, or should I say X, at Watches Idea. If you'd like to contact us, our email is digitalwatchespodcast@gmail.com.
This has been a Froods for Thought production.